Get ready for Rob Vega, also called Roald Woods, because nobody wanted to introduce me. Hello, everybody.
Big guy, thank you for doing our show.
I figured that was, that's the way she would do it, because, voice.
Or the cute little voice that you did earlier. Well, that face.
Oh, really?
That face,
you like that?
That's, yeah, it reminds me of like my Aunt
Doesn't
Mildred.
quite have the punch, Doesn't have the punch you need.
Yeah.
You never know. So,
you never know.
So, well, thank you for doing this. We're familiar with who you are. So if you
I'm not, Steve. I'm not.
You're not.
I don't know who he is.
Sorry.
Well, you're just an old white guy like me. So if you would,
I'm getting there too. So yeah.
I know, right? So you don't have hair like we do. So with your voices and your voiceover and who you are, would you like to give us a brief history so the people that are listening or that even want to get into being voice actors can like say, oh, or into radio, this is what we do. This is how we start. And by the way, you are in South Africa. So
I am.
We wanted to let everybody, yes, and you did work in America. So please tell us your story and you be you. And David and I will just sit here and do our usual thing.
Could I just say before you start, Roald, you have a great face for radio.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes.
My career as a model remained firmly on the launch pad. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. My story. Well, it's as long as a piece of string, really. I was born in the UK when my parents were jetting around Europe. As a matter of fact, this is a true story. My mum went into labor in Switzerland. And of course, back in the day, you had to pay for that sort of thing in Switzerland. And my dad said, nope, can't afford it, got in the combi and went to the nearest welfare state, which was the UK. Yeah, got it there for free. So I was born for free. If that means anything, born free.
If we knew how to edit music, we would put that theme into this. But we don't. So. There you go.
Free as the wind blows. There you go. You don't have to edit it now. So yeah.
But Roald, can I just ask you, have your parents always been such cheapskates then that they didn't want to pay for you to be born?
Well, my mum was an accountant, so yes. And my father was what was he? I don't know what he was. He was a printer. He was a sheriff. He was a deputy sheriff at one point. And not the kind with the hat. So he had all kinds of jobs. Was he a cheapskate? I don't know. He was a bartender at one point. So yes, I guess he was. Yes. Saw the value in not spending money or other people's money. He was quite happy to spend other people's money, but not his. Yeah. And that was how he survived. My mum, of course, was an accountant. And this is also a true story. Up until the day she passed away, she was still waiting for me to get what she would call a real job. So that's what she wanted. I think she loved me as a son, but probably a little disappointed with where I went career-wise, because
my mom was a little different. She wouldn't breastfeed me. She just told me we were just friends. So I understand how that works. Yeah. So
well, Steve, let me tell you, my mom. Since we are going there,
sure.
We're opening up like a Bill Burr set. Yes, my mom actually didn't want kids. I know, and yet here I am, despite all the birth control and things.
Well, bang. I think they did their best, didn't they? Because obviously they went off to Switzerland to try and not to make it happen. So.
Well, true story. They went all over Europe. They were all over Europe, and they were doing that whole hippie '60s thing. And then I spoiled the party. I came along, so that wasn't really the plan. So anyway, that was the UK. I spent the first sort of 2 years of my life there. And then they thought, well, where are they going to go now? So they had family in South Africa and Australia, and they didn't really want to go to Oz. I don't know, for whatever reason. So they came here and then didn't leave. And this is where I kind of grew up. We used to go back and forth to the UK and see the family and that sort of thing. But here I am with my weird hybrid accent thing, which people in the UK obviously know I'm not from there. And the people in South Africa figure I'm not from here either. So I'm really like Tom Hanks in the airport movie. I have no country. I'm countryless, which was great when I lived in the US because people also there, I used to say to them, they said, where you're from? And I said, South Africa. And they said, oh, you're not from South Africa. People don't sound like that in South Africa. And I used to say, well, yeah, I was born in the UK. Oh, you're a Brit. Done. But I'm not really. So I'm from all over. So my story. I'm
impressed. People in the U.S. even knew where South Africa was. What are you kidding? So
South Africa. I mean, that's the capital city of Sweden, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. I was in Atlanta once, and I was checking into one of those little seedy hotels outside the city.
Sure,
And
$5 an hour. Yeah, sure.
No, I was there for 2 hours, so there was a cut rate.
Okay.
So I came up and I walked into the reception area, and the guy said, "Hey, so where are you coming from?" So I figured he meant, I just come from Florida. So I said, "Oh, I just came from Tampa," and he said, "Oh, you guys got strange accents down there." So he really didn't know where I was from. Yeah, what were we saying?
We're talking about your beginning and how you started, and then we got off on a tangent like we usually
went
do
all
when
over
we
the
speak.
place.
Yeah,
like old white guys. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
Sonny,
yes.
tell us where you came from.
Is the nurse going to be here again, Steve? Is somebody knocking on the door here? It's the nurse.
Yes.
Tell her to go. I'm stressed.
There you go. I got
All
my
right.
I got my Depends on, and I already had my feeding. Let's go.
And you got your Spanx on? All right, good.
There you go.
Right. So there you go. So, okay. So came here when I was a little boy, did all sorts of things, went to private boarding schools because, I was fairly academically orientated, and the family thought, good, he's going to be an accountant or an engineer. I actually did 1 year of engineering, and yeah, I literally went to my final math exam. I wrote my name at the top, drew a picture of Snoopy, and walked out of the exam. And that kind of set that in motion.
So that was like top grades for that then, because
Yeah.
did you put the date on it as well, or?
No, I didn't put the date. That's why I got 0. If I put the date, I probably would have got 1%.
But Roald, joking apart, you have this fantastic voice. And
Thanks.
is it because you are, and of course the face, yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. Is it because you have this mixed heritage, do you think, or is because because South Africa is full of people from all over the planet? Did that all contribute towards your wonderful voice?
I'd love to tell you that's true, but not really. I mean, my father had a pretty impressive voice. I mean, it's genetics. I couldn't tell you I sat in a room somewhere and built this. My father had a big voice. My aunt was an opera singer. So, there you go. So the vocal thing was there. She was weird, but she had a terrific voice. And yeah, my heritage is weird because I remember up until the time my father passed, I thought it was straight down the line. German from my father's side, English from my mum. So the English thing is there. My mum's side's all English, blah, blah, blah. But my dad, it turns out that the family there were Jews. They were escaping Germany, and they pretended to be something else. It's quite a story, and I've never been able to put it together. So I don't know where my father comes from, but wherever he came from, they had good voices. So, thanks, Dad. So yeah, that's it. That's where that all comes from.
You said,
not sure.
You said that your mother always thought that you'd get a normal job. But as I understand it, you've been incredibly successful with your voiceovers, and you've been all over the world and managed to work all over the world. Done a lot of premium products and for Fortune 500 companies.
This is going to sound really. No, it hasn't been bad at all. But this I got from my father. I remember when I was a little boy, I must have been about 9 or 10, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And in some senses, I still don't know. But he said to me, look, son, whatever it is you decide to do, was the one piece of advice he gave me that I listened to. Everything else was rubbish, but this was good. And he said to me, just remember, you're too talented to starve. And what I took away from that was, don't let money dictate what you're going to do. Find what you like. Seriously, this sounds like some hippie left thing, whatever, but it's true. If you can find something you like doing, you enjoy doing, it's going to be a rough ride because things will be good, they'll be bad. But if you're doing something you love, you don't worry about stuff like that. You have I mean, I never planned to move around the world. It wasn't like, right, that's it. I'm going to be this global nomad and I'm going to live in the UK. I'm going to go back there. Then I'm going to hop over to the US. So whatever. I never planned that. I just went where things were happening and opportunities arose, and that's where I went. And I guess I had a plan B, but I was fairly confident in what I could do. And I always thought, yeah, I'm too talented to stop. I'll figure something out. I'll do whatever it takes. It drove my mother crazy because she wanted me to have a pension plan when I was 16, seriously. And I mean, I still don't have one. So, it's a very different mindset. My father, on the other hand, loved the way I was going. He thought that was great. Just, hey, take your caravan, go, find a spot, do what you love. And yeah, it's been fun.
So where did your first big break come from to set you off on this journey?
Where did my first break come from? Well, I don't know if there was any one big thing. There were little things that all kind of added up to something, if that makes sense. Well, back in the day, let me just rewind the clock a bit. Back in the day, we already established that I crashed and burned with the engineering stuff. So my mum said to me, right, you either head back to the UK or you stay here. And of course, I wasn't really keen to go back to the UK at that point. And I think this is a great country. It's got lots of problems, but I thought the people were great. And she said, fine. The problem was, this was the late 80s. And that meant I had to go and join the military. So that's what I had to do. It was either join the military for 2 years or go to prison for 6.
This is the South African military.
Yes, it was the conscription system. Yeah. And she thought this would be good for me. This young man who was 18, who had no clue about what he wanted to do, had just blown up his engineering career, clearly wasn't going to be an accountant. Why don't you go off and do that and figure stuff out?
Make a man out of you, Rob.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, whatever. So I did that for 2 years, and it was fairly interesting. I suppose I could write a book on that at some point when my therapist and I agree on a title. But it taught me a lot. I met some good people. And one of the things I did enjoy when I was in the army is we did a lot of flood relief. And that was great because South Africa back in the day was very divided. People talk about the color thing, but it was a color thing, but it was also a cultural thing. So you just grew up in separate streams from people. And it was really quite strange, actually. And when I was in the army, it kind of brought everybody back together again, because you were in the poor areas, a lot of the the people of color areas and so on. And it opened my eyes up to what the country was really about. And it also made me realize, the universe didn't revolve around me. It was a very humbling experience, and it was good for me. Did it make a man out of me? It probably helped me decide a few things. And I was a lot more grateful when I came out. Yeah. And in my last couple of months in the army, I applied to be on a radio station. The radio station, they had a position going. And I didn't think for 1 minute this was something difficult. I thought, yeah, I'll go do that. And I ended up leaving the army, and I did that for about a year. And that set me, once you're in broadcasting, you meet John, you meet Sally, you meet Tim. And if you're any good and you fairly useful to work with and you're a nice guy, you just go down that path and you get to know people, and they go, oh, can you read this? Can you do that? Can you do the show? And you go, sure. And you practice, and so it goes. It's not something I ever thought I would do.
Did you miss, obviously you talked about when you were in the army, you had to go and flood places. At least that's what I understood you. You obviously,
yes.
Yeah. Oh, I was flood. Oh, I thought you had to go and flood places deliberately.
No, flood relief. There was a lot of flood.
I thought, there surely must be a future in that somewhere. But you didn't
John,
have to go to the radio station.
David, you probably should turn up your hearing aid. I think I'm just saying. So.
Oh, okay.
No, it was. Apartheid was a dreadful, awful thing. But I will say, our generation that came up, and I wouldn't say we got rid of it, but we certainly were a bit of a catalyst. I mean, the kids. I was protesting in the late 80s with this whole rubbish that was going on, and we all knew this is going to go. This is garbage, because our friends, we had all friends of whatever persuasion, and the funny thing is, when I got into the army, I got to meet more people. And it was the weirdest thing, because you would imagine the army would kind of be like a weapon for the apartheid government. But it was the exact opposite. It was you got to help people, you got to meet people, see the humanity in people, which was seriously lacking at that time. And it turned out to be a positive experience. And that's
obviously,
all handed out food parcels, help people.
joking about the flood side of it, but
sure.
I mean, I know that certainly in the 40s and in the 50s, various different armies around the world were still segregated. So so what that was not the case then in South Africa.
Not in the army.
Okay, so it was just if you were in that age group, regardless.
No, I see what you mean. No, the mandatory conscription was only for white people, but the army had people of all colors. So it's a good career for some people, and the structure, and it's got pensions and all that. So it was good for them, for people who like that sort of thing. Once my 2 years was up, I was out of there, into media, into broadcasting, but it taught me. It made me humble. It connected me with a lot of people, which was good for a teenager to know that they're not God, which is great.
And that gave you an opportunity to have. Were you doing just segments then for the radio station, or did he offer you a show, or what was the voiceovers?
Well, when you start in radio, and this is true globally, you're just doing all the dirty stuff, the late night shows, you fetch guys coffee, you do what needs to happen, do what needs to take. I mean, at that time, it was so weird. You had these, the country was still in apartheid, so you had these little homelands. They tried to, kind of like the American version would be the reservations. They had homelands in South Africa, which nobody around the world recognized except here. And they said, well, that's a different country. So the radio station that I got into was in one of those different countries. So I had to drive out to that different country. It took me about an hour or so to get there. And then it was an independent radio station. It was nothing to do with South Africa, not really. It was a bizarre thing. And then, of course, when apartheid went, all those borders were gone. Not that they weren't gone already. And things became more normal. And that was sort of the birth of independent radio. What was the question again?
No, it was more of a question of, you were able then to have your own show, and
yes. So you do everything, and I think it's probably true of any career. You do what needs to be done. So I had to drive out there. I had to, true story, clean the studio, do everything, because it was like a little cottage built on top of a mountain with a helipad and a pool, and strange. And the main studio was in Johannesburg, but this studio was in a little place called Garankuwa, which was about an hour outside of Johannesburg. And without getting into the complications, they would run the broadcast feed through a line to this different country. But for half of the day, they were broadcasting from Joburg, location-wise, but the signal would emanate from outside the country. I know it's a really silly thing, but for guys like me, they said, right, we can only use the line 50% of the day. Out you go into the middle of nowhere, and you broadcast from there. And I did a midnight to 6 a.m. show 3 times a week. That's how I started. And
was that a talk show or
no, it was music.
Talk music. Okay.
Yeah, it was a talk radio station. Funnily enough, funny you should ask that. But at nighttime, it was music. So it was great. And while that happened, I still had this thing in the back of my mind. I could hear my mum saying, "Got to get a real job. This broadcast thing is." So I studied via correspondence, and I did a business degree. And in fact, there it is over there. So it's right there.
Very cool. We see the corner of it, so we believe you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's sort of real. Yeah, I didn't have to get it online, but yeah. So I did that part-time, and then while I was doing that, you just get to know people in the business, and I got to know more people. There was another independent station in the country called Capital Radio, and they were moving to a coastal city. And they knew that I'd spent a lot of my childhood there. So they said, right, why don't you leave? We're going to offer you a proper show, 4:30 to 6 o'clock, which was a bit better, Monday to Friday, and you get to produce the breakfast show, which means you make coffee for the morning host. And that happened, and I moved down to the coast, and then that's when things really started to happen for me. Yeah, and people heard me on the air and said, "Have you considered, reading things, commercial scripts, whatever?" And I hadn't up until that point, to be honest. And I guess that's how it started. Yeah. So.
And how did you get from there to New York? Or how did you get from there to the States?
Well, what did I do after that? Well, after that, there was an opportunity in Cape Town to join a station in Cape Town, which I did for about 6 years. And these other stations I've just mentioned before, they were on medium wave, which was okay. It was difficult. But this is the 90s, as the country, the first democratic elections happened and things started to normalize, bands started coming back to the country. And it was actually a good time. It was a very good time. And I moved down to Cape Town, joined the station, and I started with a weekend breakfast show, which is quite nice, 6 to 9 a.m. And I really got into the commercial side of things. So I did that for about 6-7 years. And then I left radio because during that time in Cape Town, I'd gotten into commercial work. I'd started reading for retail companies and so forth. And well, it paid a lot more than radio. And I was a young guy who just got married with a baby on the way. And that's what I did. I went where the money was, and I moved up back to Joburg to be a voice guy. Got in one of the top agencies in the country, and they were good to me. They got me out there, they got me work, so on and so forth. And that's how basically it went from there. I went to the UK for a while, came back to South Africa, and I decided the States is where I wanted to go because I had a lot of friends there that I'd met over the years that had come over. My best friend at school was a guy who grew up in Sherman, upstate New York. That's where he was from. And the family came down to South Africa for about 20 years. And I went to school with him for a while. And I mean, he loved it here, but his wife, this is the weird thing. He was an American who didn't want to go back to the States, who married a South African who wanted to get out of the country. So eventually, despite all his objections, she dragged him back. He really didn't. I mean, I visited him in Sherman. Sherman's it's right off the map. It's right there on Lake Erie. Wow. It's at the end of the world. I can see why he might not want to. Nothing wrong with Sherman, but he liked to be near the action. And Sherman is about as far away from the action as you could probably get. So but he told me lots of things about the States, not the rubbish you see on the news and stuff. A guy who'd lived there. And I thought, I think that sounds pretty good. And I guess in the back of my mind, I thought, I'd like to check it out one day. And over the years, I became a bit of a student of the country and learned all the things that a lot of the kids would learn and people would learn, and developed an interest. And with the interest came an interest in the accent and the media and the marketing and so forth. And what I obviously realized is that, oh, wow, it's a colony, just like South Africa, just a lot bigger. But I always thought to myself, it's like a baby, because it's a very new country with lots of cash. And it's a place where, every flavor is there. It's very exciting. I mean, I could get all patriotic here and flag waving, but I do think it's a remarkable place. But every remarkable place has sides, different sides. It's just the nature of the beast. It's certainly the freest place I've ever lived in. And of course, when people are free to do what they want, they can do some good things and they can do some really stupid things. And that's just, I like that. I think it's great. If I could have stayed there, I probably would have. But situation was what it was. I probably needed a couple more years. But I haven't shut any thoughts down about the country. I think it's remarkable. It's not perfect, but I don't think I would feel comfortable if it was. That would be weird.
That would be Singapore. If it was perfect, it would be like Singapore. That's the perfect country, right?
I wouldn't want to be in it, because then where do I fit in? I am a long way from perfect. I want to be I want to be in an imperfect country because then there's a space for me. There's a space. And I just love the attitude of the people who, and this is everybody. This is from the guy that I bought what is it? It's like a Giro. What is this? Like a wrap.
It's a Giro. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's a Giro from a guy in Harlem. Seriously, I
Right.
bought it from in Harlem. And to the guy I met at a ski resort in Vermont. Different people, but the same. This sounds like a cliche, but I just didn't find that people put up the barriers that a lot of other people do in their heads about things. There's a
I think it depends where. I think it depends where you are in the States.
Sure.
Like if you're like in New York, so to speak, that's a whole different mentality than the rest of the country. New York is very like what we always joke about when we have our conference calls, right? It's kick in the door, go forward. The rest of the country is like, ooh. And in New York, because you're so on top of each other, when something goes wrong, New Yorkers, real New Yorkers, not people that think they're New Yorkers, they band together to help. You know, in other places in the world, when something goes wrong, or in the United States, you're like, oh, okay. But in New York, it's sort of like you're all stuck on this little island. I'm talking about Manhattan. And when something goes wrong, it's like, we have to do something immediately. And sometimes other places, it's sort of like, you know, you're spread out. It's a different mentality. Like if you're in the Midwest, they're very helpful. So, you know, to an extent, you know, down here in Texas, okay. And then you go to the West Coast, and, excuse me, and that's a whole nother thing. So it's very different, like, but, you know, they know they're free, but different places just have different, whether it's a work mentality, it's, you have to help your neighbor mentality, or whether it's like, you know, leave me the F alone mentality, which is much New York. But then all of a sudden, when tragedy happens, everybody in New York gets to be like, we all have to help each other. We're all stuck here together. Let's do it. The rest of the country sort of like, there's a tragedy. It didn't affect me because I'm 2 miles away. We're good. In New York, you're only 2 miles to each other. So you have to work. So I think there's I think it's a different mentality than what I see as we travel the States.
Well, obviously you've lived there and you've seen everything. Well, a lot more. I've been to about, I think it's the last count was 28 states, and most of them on the East Coast.
Okay.
And you're right. I mean, I was chatting to a guy in one of these coffee places, and he said that to me. He says, you know, New York's an island off the East Coast of the United States, and he was pretty clear. He said, yes, the flag is the same, but we're different. That's it. That's it. And you know, you say that I'm friendly, but I have to tell you, this is true. Maybe it's just because of who I am. I don't know. Maybe I just fitted in. I thought the people of New York, I enjoyed them. I liked them. They liked me. It was bang, bang, bang. That's it. I actually found a lot of the other states. I mean, we went down to Virginia once, to Mountain Lake Lodge, West Virginia, was it Virginia?
Oh, West Virginia. That's where husband and wife divorce, and they're still brother and sister. So yeah, that's not that.
But we checked into this place. It was called Mountain Lake Lodge. It's where they filmed Dirty Dancing. I took my wife there for an anniversary. It was awesome. But I just found the people way too friendly. That was me. I just thought, there's no ways that you're this friendly towards me. You don't know me.
That's right.
I found in New York the people, this is it. Here we go. This is me. Bang. If you got something for me, good. If there's no reason for us to be talking, cheers. That's it. I liked that. I thought that was great. I thought it was honest, and it didn't waste my time. It didn't waste their time. So you see, maybe I mean, maybe
New York is very much like, I was joking with someone the other day.
Yeah.
New York is like at 8 o'clock if the meeting starts and you're not there at 7:45, you're already late. That's the mentality. The mentality in New York is when you come up with an idea, the next thing out of most of our mouths is going to be like, that's great. Why haven't you already presented it to me? Like, why isn't it done? It should have been done yesterday. You thought of it 3 minutes ago. So it's a very much like get it done, move. Then hi, y'all, which is like the Virginia. In Texas, my first time in Austin was in 2015. And I was smoking a cigar walking down 6th Street. And someone says to me, hello. And I'm with one of the guys I work with. And I'm like, what the? He goes, no, they're friendly here. And I'm like, friendly? Don't say, I'm walking, leave me alone. Like I'm used to New York where nobody like, whatever. You have 12 million people doing this all day. So different places, but New York is very much, let's get it done. And let's be blunt. And that's the other thing. In New York, I can yell at you and you can yell at me. And when we're done, I'm going to be like, we're going to lunch. Oh yeah. And we've already forgotten about it. Everywhere else in America, if you yell at someone about something, my mom, I know your mommy told you you were special when you came in 300th, but you're a loser. So let me help you out. And it's very different mentality. In New York, it's just direct and blunt. We don't care. Like you've been on Noisy Panda conference calls, oh, I'm direct and blunt. And half the people don't like it because they're just like, you hurt my feelings. Too bad. You know, we're not
Yeah.
here to coddle you. We're adults.
I've always thought New York was like a city with ADHD, and I think I've got ADHD
Yes.
too. There's no time, but I like that. You know,
Yeah.
for me, New York is like, it's like Simon Cowell in Idol, you know, American Idol. If a guy's on stage and he sucks, you need to tell him.
Yep.
Otherwise, if you tell him how good he is, he's going to waste the next 20 years pursuing a career he has no business being in.
Correct.
And you actually do someone a favor. It's nothing personal. It's not, well, maybe it is a bit personal, but you're not attacking him. But if you say, listen, Steve, you suck, mate. That's it.
Yeah.
You need to hear that. Steve needs to hear that. So Steve can go, right, not going to be doing that career. And he goes and becomes a financier and he makes a fortune. He says, oh, thank God I didn't go into the whole music thing because I would have been on my ass, which in a way is that's why I like New York. And it's one of the reasons why I like Joburg, because for me, New York is to, say, LA what Joburg is to Cape Town. Gotcha. Cape Town is beautiful. I mean, we Matthew's there and I've lived there, lovely city. But man, I don't know. It's just, everybody loves everyone and it's all earthy and pretty and sweet. And I don't know, Steve.
I can't do that. I lived in LA for a while.
I find that dishonest. And I'm not having a go. You know, if people like LA, they're great. But I always said, my friends in New York said to me, they said, well, if you like this city, you're going to hate LA.
Yep. That's very true.
They used to say to me.
Yep.
But it was a good city. But as you said, it's nothing like the rest of the country. My wife and I traveled. We went up to Boston. We went up to Vermont, like I said. Lovely. I mean, it's an amazing country to travel in. There is so much. We wouldn't book. We were crazy. We would just go, we would head north or head west, and we would just figure it out. It drove my wife crazy. But I said, honey, it's going to be fine. And I will say this, Steve. I will say this. If I wanted to get a normal, honest thing out of people, I would revert, you know, I'd become an American. But if I wanted to get better service, I just did find that this stood out a bit, and it was good. The one guy that came to do my cable, it was the weirdest thing. When he first came to the house, I thought, I'm going to practice my accent on him. You know, I just want to say, I want to fit in. I want to, if I'm going to be doing American stuff, I need to be able to fool Americans. Right. So I did that for a while. I would get on the train, I'd buy tickets, I would talk to people. So it became second nature. So I wasn't putting on the accent, I was doing it. And the guy came to put my cable in, and I just said, okay, do it over there, just put it up there, you know, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. And he was cool, put it in, blah, blah, and went away. Then we had a problem. He came back to the house and I forgot the way I had spoken to him before. And he just said, man, that is a really, wow, what are you doing? And I was like, oh no, this is me. And he goes, oh, okay. And he didn't believe that I wasn't an American. So that was crazy. And he said, eventually I convinced him. And he said, it's kind of like you're a blonde in a bar and everybody wants to light your cigarette. It was fantastic. I mean, but New Yorkers were the least impressed by it.
Because it's a melting pot.
Yeah,
we live with everybody. I live two blocks from the United Nations. So across from where I lived, I had the Indian embassy. Around the corner, I had like 15 other consul. So me walking to the office in the morning or me going to dinner, I would bump into literally the United Nations. So I heard accents from everywhere. So, you know, as I became a financier, it was interesting because I'd be on calls with people and guys I work with go, I don't understand. I'm like, dude, this is nothing. This guy's from India. He's from this part of it. Yeah, just listen, you'll figure. And they'd be like, real. I'm like, I hear this every day. So it's a very different thing. And the other thing is, you know, what I found in New York is people, we look at people, everyone's a human being until you're not. Yeah. It's a very different mentality. Like we don't care what color you are, and we don't care about your sexual orientation.
Correct.
You're a human being until you're not. And then when you're not, then all the ethnic things that are taboo in today's culture, we have no problem saying to your face because we're like, no, you're not a human being anymore because you did whatever. So I think that's a very different mentality. And I think it's very different and hard for people globally for that. So, you know, I
loved it. I thought it was great.
like
I think it's more honest.
Yeah, and honesty is good. It's like the joke we had on the call earlier, the conference call for Panda.
Yeah.
I said this. Colin Quinn did this thing, History of New York, and in his show, he talks about when people come to New York, they go on holiday somewhere. It's like, oh, this is beautiful. It's really nice, and they do that. When a New Yorker goes, and it's a true statement because I've done it. You go somewhere and you go, yeah, these people can never live in New York. I mean, like the mentality is not like, like this is a beautiful place. Like you couldn't live in our city, and then it's one of those things. And like when you go to a store and someone says hello to you, like in Austin, and you're like, well, don't ask me how, what do you care about my day? I'm New York thing is like, like, dude, just give me the ice cream cone. I got things like, you don't need to know how I'm doing. Just let me pay my $4 and leave. So it is a different way, but it seems to work.
But I will say this: the one big negative for me when it came to New York is that I got used to it. I liked it. I loved the way it worked. I love this. I mean, service is great. It works. It gets done. Whatever. Then I came back here, and my wife. I found myself. I don't think this is a bad thing. Things would happen. Things would go wrong. Somebody would be late. The parcel wouldn't be there. They'd be out of stock. And I go, "What are you doing? Where is it?" And my wife said to me, she said, "Why are you? What's with the accent?" I said, "I don't know. It just feels right to me to be losing my crap over bad service." And I will say it still kind of stayed with me, because when you've seen how things can be done, where and no one's doing it to prove a point. They just want to get it done. Just get it done. If you can't do it, get someone who can do it. Just get it done. And that's it. And there's no mystery about it. It just gets done. The city happens. And you just kind of start thinking, wow, why can't everybody do this? And you're right. I don't know if I've had that they couldn't live in New York thing, but I will say I compare everything these days, ever since then, to New York. The way things are done, if you want this, you get it done. And I think that people say, oh, it's hard. And I go, there are 8 million people, 9 million people in that city. It's tough to do stuff. Trust me, it's not easy, but they still get it done. And if they come to you and you can't do it, they'll get somebody else. It's just the way it is. And
they don't let you dilly-dally about it. It's very much like boom, 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 boom. And I always laugh when like you ask somebody to do something and you're like, well, I'm like, well, it should be done. We've already asked you. And it's very much that way. Service at a restaurant's better because if not, they know you're going to get. It's not forget you won't get a tip. You'll just get yelled at, but
or you'll close down.
Or they'll just what'll go.
Cheers.
Yeah, it's like it was fun and that's it. But everybody, it's just that different gruff mentality, and like when I travel globally, I have to put myself in check sometimes because we'll be somewhere where people are really, really nice. And people are like, look, Steve, like, don't. I'm like, it's like, I'm ready to come and kill. So
look at Dave's expression. He's going, I don't know what this is. This is crazy. This is
that's not the case, gentlemen. I was just actually thinking,
carry on, guys. I'll just watch you chatting and roar.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, of course, that there's only one screen up at a time, so whoever's talking gets to see it. So, no, I was just thinking how you guys, would experience living in Holland. First of all, about customer service doesn't exist, and of course, the Dutch are so laid back. It's a wonder their asses don't fall off. So, it's
oh my goodness.
it's chill city. Yeah? Have you been up this way, Roald?
When I was about 8 months old. So no.
Yeah.
No. I've been to every single country in Europe as a baby, except for Portugal. So yes, I have. I've even been to Sweden, and I've been to Norway. So my real name is Roald, and I was named after Roald Amundsen, who's this massive Norwegian hero. And when when my folks were in Norway, pushing me around in a stroller, whatever it was, people would come and say, "Oh, what is his name?" And my dad would go, "Well, his name's Roald." "Oh, you named him Roald. Oh, that's great." And then they would get all gooey-eyed about Roald Amundsen. And that is actually who I'm named after. So that's Norway. Holland as well. Is it still called Holland? Are we allowed to call it? Didn't they say that's a part of the Netherlands and we must call it the Netherlands now? Isn't that
the little boys still put their finger in a dike? That's what I want to know. No, never mind. It's for later.
That's a conversation for a completely different show.
Okay, I just checking.
but yeah. I mean, there is. I actually live in South Holland, and there's North Holland, and they are provincial provinces of the
Didn't they make a
Netherlands.
thing? Didn't they make a thing? They said, please don't call us Holland anymore, because that's it's like calling America New York. You know, like it's
that's a true statement, by the way. That's okay. I don't understand why that's a problem.
How about Arkansas?
That's not even part of America. So in 1972, I think it was in the New Yorker magazine. And people can look at Google this. It's the New Yorker's perception of the world. It has New York and the rest of the world. It goes New York. Yeah. I think it has Texas, Los Angeles, Pacific, and then like Asia. And that's very how New York looks at it. It's like everything revolves around Manhattan. So we don't understand these other things, even though we travel.
Yeah, which of course used to be Dutch, Manhattan. So
New Amsterdam,
New Amsterdam.
But the thing is, and I always find myself defending New York for some reason. I don't know why. I say, well, it's not that they are anti the rest of the world. It doesn't matter. Whatever, it's there, and if they need it for whatever reason, great. But
it sounds a lot to me like
it's not personal.
It sounds a lot to me like you're fishing for a green card, but that's.
I would. You know what? Here's the thing. Culturally, I got a friend who lives in. He's from Oklahoma, but he lived in Hawaii for a while. He worked on a radio station in Honolulu, and then he went back to Oklahoma. And he always used to say to me, he says, you're like an American with a foreign accent. That's what you are. In fact, you're like a New Yorker with a foreign accent. Although in New York, I don't know if there is such a thing as a foreign accent.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, exactly. So yes, I think it's great. Would I move back? Sure. But like any New Yorker, I would go there for a reason. I wouldn't just go there and put my hat out and say, hey, give me money and let's see what happens. I'm not going to do that. So if things go well, yes, I think it's a remarkable place. Do people fight? Of course they do. It's great. People bitch about the Constitution and the politics, and I go, but that is how it was designed to be, because all these folks were getting away from kings and monarchies and all that. So yes, the system of government, which trickles down to how people are in conversation, debate, it's working. This is the way it's supposed to be. And I look at media reports and they say, oh, this guy, that guy, what's happening? Democracy. I go, this is the way it works. This is brilliant. Everybody's speaking their mind. They're bitching about stuff. They whatever. It's fantastic. That's the way I see it. I think it's great. I'm under no illusion that it's perfect. But like I said earlier, I don't like perfect countries. That makes me uncomfortable. So yeah.
Well, now your statement your statement is spot on. The problem is what's happening now is we have this cancel culture, right? So if you say something that offends somebody, and I'm like, put your big boy pants on and let it go. We have freedom of speech. If you really just want to be like, Nazi Germany back in the 30s, okay, I'm sure you can elect somebody, which we tried apparently to do, and it didn't work out well. Then that's fine. But my point is like, if you want to live in a free country, you're going to disagree. You just whether it's Roe versus Wade, whether it's abortion, whatever, it's okay to disagree. But if somebody says something and you're like, I'm so offended, nobody cares I don't care that you're offended. No. People saying you offended them. I'm like, great, grow a pair of balls. Yeah. I'm like, I can't help you. I mean, and I think we're becoming, Jon Stewart said this many years ago, and I agree with him. He said, this is the pussification of America, which it is. It's like, one of my friends is like, he still smokes cigars. Okay. And I remember I smoked a cigar in New York once. This is a funny story. I'm at the corner smoking a cigar, stepping away from everybody, being polite. A lady looks at me with this face of disgust. Like she has this little dog that you should stick batteries in. It's not even a real dog. And she looks at me like, I'm disgusted by this. Yeah, right? It's that. She looks at me disgusted that I'm smoking a cigar. I'm polluting her space. 2 seconds later, a bus comes by with its black smoke out of it and like hits the whole crowd. Everyone's okay with that. The cigar, they're not okay with it. I'm thinking my little 35-minute to an hour mini holiday while I walk through the streets of Manhattan is what you're mad at. Meanwhile, between the cabs and the buses blowing black smoke in your face and that you're inhaling and we're good with, I was like, go slip on some black ice in July. So it was like the ridiculous.
I will say this because I do want to talk about, me, but no, I don't.
Yes, we do.
Weird. I'm loving this so much, but I will say just on one thing about that. That's the one thing that I do find, and this is going to sound like a script. It's very un-American, where people start telling other people how they should be and how they should act. I may not agree with you. I don't know who said this. It might have been Churchill, but it definitely applies to America. I don't have to agree with you, Steve, but I will die for your right to say it. That's it. The moment it starts becoming a physical thing, that's fine. But it's called freedom of speech. And it can't be partial freedom. It can't be it's freedom of speech as long as I agree with you. No, because that's not freedom of speech. That's just the preaching to the choir. That's not, what is that? That's just a big, oh, I love you. And no. In fact,
it's like Congress,
it's good that
Congress
people
said,
disagree. Yeah.
Right. But like Congress said, you can't go into a crowded firehouse and yell movie, right? You can't do that. Oh, I'm sorry. The other way around. But you can't do that because that technically freedom of speech. That's a different thing. But if someone disagrees with your politics or doesn't like whatever, okay. That's fine. And it's like these comedians over here that cancel culture is like, oh, you said this and you did. That's his job. He's a comedian. Yeah. You know, and then I think we discussed this when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. I'm like, dude, any other place in America, you're going to jail. The only reason you're not is because they're Hollywood. Don't want to hurt it. I don't F you and your feelings, pal. And I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that, you know, we've become such a pussy nation. It's like back in the day, like I would hate if there was a world war because I don't think we would have enough of what they had, like that generation back in, you know, the 30s and 40s. I don't think you have that here anymore because everybody's me, not like we have to all help each other. And the divide is so big now. I think people don't even care. It's just sort of like, oh, okay, well, that's not my problem. That's not, well, yeah, technically it's everybody's problem. And I think we don't have that anymore. And I think that's what's tearing the country apart. I don't know what they'll do to make it better. But, you know, at some point, something's going to happen where people are going to be like, oh, okay, maybe we should work together again. Maybe it should be back the way it was. Not, you know, whatever, but it's not, it's a different place.
But what is great about people disagreeing in an adult way is, I mean, I have debates with my daughter. I don't share all her points of view, but I will say this. If it's a healthy debate and you don't have a closed mind and you don't have, if someone presents something to you, you'll say, fine, but it's got to be good. You can learn something. If everybody agreed with you, you would learn absolutely nothing. And that would be awful. I love it almost seems like, I'm not going to judge the whole country because I see a little bit more light maybe than you do. I'm not sure. I think it might be a global problem. I don't think it's just an American problem.
Oh, no, I agree. It's global.
I think globally, I think there is a softening and it's a need to control what people are saying. But I think if you can, if someone can wake you up to something, and the only way they can wake you up to something is if they disagree with you, and you go, wait a minute. And when you start shutting that down, it brings freedom of speech down. It brings the level of thought down. And yeah, I would be a little concerned about that. But I don't know, Steve. Well, I think people are getting fed up with that.
Gentlemen, I'm going to use my right of freedom of speech now, and thank you both very much for being with us today.
You're killing our call. Oh, we got to do this again because you and I can go on.
I'm cool.
All right,
I'm cool with that. I'm for part two, so I'm happy with that.
We'll have to do a part two.
I'm concerned about part two at the moment, so we'll
we'll make it about me. How about that? I don't know.
Well, we did make it about you. We just didn't get to all the things that you have done.
No, I know.
So that should be our part two. We should do that in a few weeks. We should do another one when you have time and say, okay, part two.
I can do the impressions. If you're like, this is fantastic. I can do I don't have any money, but what I do have, I can do all of those things.
You should see. I forgot you did all that. You could have done all that.
Yeah,
we could do all that. We could do all that through the show, but I have to call a halt now because the nurse will be here very soon, and I'm seriously concerned now. So, gentlemen,
okay,
thank you very much. And hey, you know, noisy panda, two old white
noisy
guys,
panda, exactly.
Noise. And so we're up for part 2, 3, and 4. A fantastic time today.
For sure.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.